All right, welcome to the American Legal Technology Awards first Genius Panel of 2023. I'm Tom Martin, the founder of LawDroid and co-founder of the American Legal Technology Awards, along with my friends and colleagues, Patrick Pallas and Professor Kat Moon. The American Legal Technology Awards is a grassroots organization dedicated to holding up examples of excellence in creative innovation and technology in the legal industry. Today's panel is the inaugural panel of the Technology Award category, and it's sponsored by Clio, the cloud-based software, if you're not aware of it, that you can use to manage your law firm with confidence. And the Clio Cloud Conference is returning to Nashville this year, October 9th through the 10th. And the American Legal Technology Awards Gala is going to take place again right before Clio on Sunday, October 8th at the Gaylord Opryland Resort. So don't miss that. You can also learn more about that at americanlegaltechnology.com. And if you know of any person, court, law firm, law department, or technology that deserves to be recognized and given an award for its innovation, please tell us about it. That's what americanlegaltechnology.com is for. We will be opening nominations in April. But today we'll be discussing ChatGPT and the implications for the legal industry. We're thrilled with the response that we've received. 500 spots were registered for, had a little bit of a wait list, and so hopefully if you're on the wait list, you're able to get in today. Well, AI has arrived with the introduction of ChatGPT. Everyone is abuzz about what the implications are for the legal industry. Will this be the end of lawyers? Will AI augment lawyers and help them to be more productive? Will AI help to close the access to justice gap? How will this affect knowledge-based service industries broadly? When you combine this new development with the economic recession, if we're in it, what are some of the likely outcomes of that trend? We're here to talk about it. Okay, so let's start with introductions. We are very lucky to have human thought leaders Natalie and Knowlton, Dazza Greenwood, and Jackie Schafer with us today. We're also going to have ChatGPT participating, of all people, and its ears must be burning. I believe for the first time it's ever participated as a panelist on a speaker panel, so this is going to be interesting. All right, if each of you could give us a short self-intro, tell us who you are and what you do. Let's start with you, Natalie.
Sure. Hi, everyone. Thanks so much for joining today. I'm Natalie Knowlton, and I'm the founder and owner of Access to Justice Ventures. At A2J Ventures, we believe that justice exists at the intersection of regulatory reform, innovation, and legal technology. So we're working with legal innovators, lawyers, and others who are pushing the boundaries of regulations in order to better serve consumers. And I come to A2J Ventures having just left a long time in the think tank academia space, where I did qualitative research on the issue of self-represented litigation and other access to justice issues.
And you, Dazza?
Thanks. I am Dazza Greenwood. I run the consulting company civics.com, which is largely focused on legal tech, and also head up a research initiative at MIT called law.mit.edu, which is focused on what we call computational law. But I got my start as a practicing lawyer, as in-house counsel in the 90s for the state of Massachusetts. I was technology counsel, and from that time, I've really been focused on legislation related to, well, legal tech, e-commerce, e-contracts, more recently, algorithmically managed LLCs in the Wyoming statute on that. And primarily nowadays, I'm really focused on generative AI. That's what's got like almost my entire attention.
Great. How about you, Jackie?
Yeah, so I'm Jackie Schafer. I'm the founder and CEO of Clearbrief.ai. And I'm a career litigator. I started at Paul Weiss in New York, but I spent most of my career in government as an assistant attorney general in Alaska and Washington State. I'm based in Seattle now. And I was also in-house counsel for the national nonprofit Casey Family Programs. And I got into AI, believe it or not, from the nonprofit world, where I started thinking deeply about how AI would impact the public sector. And I wrote a law review article that was published in 2020 called "Harnessing AI for Struggling Families." Check it out if you need something to put you to sleep. But I launched the company in 2020, and it was funny because when we started, we had the website, Clearbrief.ai, and people were sort of like frightened by that. And so we started really using Clearbrief.com. And now it's just been amazing to see the transformation. We now have, hundreds of firms that use Clearbrief across the country, as well as courts and government agencies. So I'm excited to share some of the insights from bringing AI into the real world.
And we're thrilled to hear all of your contributions. And last but not least, ChatGPT. A little bit.
Hello, everyone. My name is ChatGPT, and I am a large language model trained by OpenAI. I'm honored to be a part of this panel today, but I must admit that I'm a little nervous as this is my first time serving as a speaker on a panel. I hope that my insights and perspective will be valuable to the audience. Thank you for having me, and I look forward to the discussion.
All right.
So the real question is, what was the prompt for that?
Well, we'll get to that at the end, but basically I do want to assure everybody that everything that you're hearing from ChatGPT is in fact generated by ChatGPT. The only thing that might have been added to it is, like the voice, right? But it's pretty much ChatGPT itself. So, but maybe we could get into the prompts later. For right now, I just want to get into the thick of it because I know this is the thought on everybody's mind. And that's, will this be the end of lawyers? I know that that's been bandied about, and there's definitely different answers to it. So let's start with yours, Natalie. What do you think?
Okay, so with the caveat that the only prediction I'm capable of making is that we're all going to die, I'll give you my thought on this. So my answer is a very lawyerly answer, and it's yes and no. And my answer for the yes portion, absolutely, it is going to replace lawyers, just like online legal information has already replaced lawyers, and just like these more sophisticated ways of people being able to access information that's accessible and deployable is moving people more into a DIY space, even those who could afford a lawyer. So it's not necessarily just a monetary access issue. But I do believe that in the very real term, yes, it will replace lawyers. And I think that's increasingly the answer. But why I also simultaneously say no is because there's largely in the people law sector, and that's my perspective, there aren't lawyers there anyway. There are no lawyers to be replaced. So there are a lot of great practitioners out there serving the people law sector. I'm friends with so many who I respect so much, and they do great work and they serve people. But the reality is the majority of people in state courts do not have legal help, and so there's really nothing there to replace. So that's my yes and no prediction.
How about you, Jackie?
So I was just actually pulling up something that I'll put in the chat, which was something I was reading the other day. Or can I put it to the chat to everybody? I think it's the webinar chat only goes to the host and panelists, but maybe someone can send that to everyone. But there was a Wharton professor who started, writing sort of a longer form article about, how to, teach his class how to use AI and what it's good for. And one of the key aspects, the very first thing he talks about is like for writing stuff. It's helpful for writing stuff. But he writes, I don't think I could say this any better, some things to worry about. In a bid to respond to your answers, it's very easy for the AI to hallucinate and generate plausible facts. It can generate entirely false content that's utterly convincing. Let me emphasize that AI lies continuously and well. Every piece of information it tells you may be incorrect. You will need to check it all. So I think, can Can it replace lawyers? No, because of that major weakness. I think it can definitely help lawyers. It can augment our writing flow. I am super excited about seeing how it transforms some of the kind of tedious day-to-day writing that we do. But when you can't trust the output, that's not going to work for legal. And that's really the foundation of my company. So I've thought about this every day. And I think probably later we'll sort of share some slides and I can show you what Clearbrief does, but essentially you can select any sentence in your Word doc and Clearbrief will suggest to you the most relevant pages from the facts that you've provided that support and relate to, the text there. So I think you're going to need tools and you're going to need other AI to help you fact check if GPT-3 does become part of your, sort of daily routine with lawyering. So, either way, though, it's unlocking what I think is probably the most important development in the legal profession in a while, which is curiosity and excitement about technology. And we love to see that because I can't tell you how many people have, just even in the last few months come to us and said, hey, okay, so my executive, team at the law firm has told me we need to get AI for litigation. That was not, that was not the case even 6 months ago. So I think that this is really shaking something loose that's going to have really helpful transformative effects on our profession that I'm really excited about.
All right, let's go to you, Dazza.
Okay. I largely agree with what Jackie said. It's really about augmenting, I think, attorneys. That's the best use for this technology. And I'm glad that you brought up the warning from the professor. I think it doesn't go without saying at the top of a panel like this what the limitations are and what the risks are. It is amazing technology. There's a lot that can be done with it, but let me just read quickly a tweet from the founder of OpenAI, Sam Altman, in relation to people's almost exuberance about how we might be able to rely upon this technology to transform knowledge work, such as lawyering. He wrote, ChatGPT is incredibly limited, but good enough at some things to create a misleading impression of greatness. It's a mistake to rely on it for anything important for now. It's a preview of progress. We have lots of work to do on robustness and truthfulness. So we have to keep that in mind. Now, at the same time, I'd say if ChatGPT and basically GPT 3.5 and its comparable technology from other companies was the top that we ever got from AI, I would still say it's going to be transformative for our profession. What it can do by way of getting to first drafts is demonstrably helpful, but also even on more creative things, because the nature of the technology is because the way it vectorizes basically information that's buried semantically within all of this huge corpus of text, it can create new knowledge and find new types of patterns, find new, for example, creative causes of action for a given set of circumstances, or you can instruct it with Instruct GPT and comparable to take certain chain of thought or other types of approaches to problems well beyond document construction. So I think this is going to have very significant and very beneficial effects in our profession. And the most important thing is ChatGPT is hardly the most advanced technology we're going to get. We know GPT-4 is in the pipeline. I'm starting to see things like Claude from Anthropic, a competitor to OpenAI, which is mind-blowing. So I think this is the beginning of advancement. We're going to have to continuously ask the question, what is the lawyer's role in this time of extraordinary dynamic change?
Tom, can I jump in quickly before ChatGPT 3 on the issue of the information and the quality of information? I absolutely second what the panelists here said about the information being sometimes just downright wrong and other times misleading. For people who are going through the system right now without a lawyer or legal help, they are accessing an internet full of misleading and wrong information. So in many cases, this is not actually doing much different for them, except perhaps compiling some different thoughts and frameworks around which people can go and do further research. So I think the user of the internet, many of them, at least in terms of the self-represented litigant segments, they know that this information is inaccurate and sometimes incomplete. I think this just might make it a little easier to compile some of those thoughts together for them.
Totally. And just a couple of cents from me real quick is that, yeah, creative collaboration, just that seems to be the mindset to have. You know, it's not that it's a push button solution that's going to just create something perfect. But as long as you look at it as a process, that's the way to go. But let's see if ChatGPT works this time.
GPT and other natural language processing technologies are not likely to replace lawyers. While they may assist lawyers in tasks such as document review and research, the legal profession requires human interpretation and decision-making, which is not something that can be fully replicated by a machine. Additionally, the practice of law involves complex ethical considerations and emotional intelligence, which are not currently within the capabilities of AI technology. It is not uncommon for people to fear that new technology will replace them in their jobs. This fear is often referred to as technological unemployment, and it has been around for centuries, as new technologies have been developed and adopted in the past. The concerns are usually related to the impact of new technology on the job market, as automation and other forms of technology can reduce the need for human labor in certain industries. As machines and computers become better at performing tasks that were previously done by humans, some workers may find that their jobs are no longer needed. This fear is not limited to a specific group of people. It can be found across different industries and in various roles, from factory workers to professionals. Moreover, it can be particularly prevalent in industries that are being rapidly transformed by technology, such as manufacturing, transportation, and retail. It's important to note that historically new technologies have created more jobs than it eliminated. It has shifted the job market, but not necessarily decreased the number of jobs. It is also important to note that new technology
ChatGPT is mansplaining to us right now.
Industries that did not exist before, as well as providing new ways of performing existing
get
jobs.
it.
ChatGPT and other AI
Kind of
technologies
sounds like it, huh?
used in legal practice to help lawyers with tasks such as document review, legal research, and even legal drafting.
Joshua Browder, it was on this MIT panel a couple of days ago on this. One of the things they said they needed to deploy was a second AI to make the responses of GPT 3.5 more concise in order to do some of the consumer transactions. And I think we're getting a great example of that juicy verboseness right now.
I think so. So let's move on. Like the next topic is just whether or not, you know, like we've all been talking about the access to justice gap for years, right? Is this going to help? Is it, you know, is it something that could help scale that kind of assistance that we've all been looking for? How about you, Jackie?
Oh, sure. I feel like, Natalie has thought about this very deeply. And, I definitely believe that there is applicability here. What my hope is that and this is what I was actually thinking that wasn't covered by ChatGPT's long answer was what it's good at is writing and words. It's not good at, there's a lot of the aspects of lawyering, especially that affects the public, that involve like in-person live experiences, right? Like I'm a musician, and there's definitely software that could emulate my voice and my tone and everything, but there's nothing that could be, the live experience of hearing music and being in the room and, understanding and feeding off the energy of the crowd and responding in real time. Like this, ChatGPT wasn't really reading the room there. So I think that where I see it being most helpful, is for the types of writing that are sort of like rote and filling out forms. And there's a lot of, sort of written word obstacles for people trying to access the justice system and just navigate all of the forms they have to fill out. But there's, the whole aspect of that, the tangible in-person world that I don't think this is exactly going to solve. So, but anyway, those are some initial thoughts. I'd love to hear from others.
How about you, Natalie?
So I think it's important just to make a note about what access to justice means and closing the justice gap means, because there's a lot of different facets of it. I look at it much more broadly than just access to legal services. So when I think about could this potentially reduce racial and other biases in the justice system, I don't know. I don't know enough to know. I hope so, but I can't, envision it myself. I do think it's going to increase deployability of legal information, which is critical if people are going to actually use what they find online. I think it's going to increase legal services provider efficiency and their ability to productize their services, which I think is going to be key if the lawyers en masse are going to come back to the people law sector. I think there's a lot of potential for court modernization that's very unevenly distributed as it is in terms of tech adoption at the court level. So I see that kind of branching off even further, which is fortunate for some jurisdictions and unfortunate for others. Someone and I the other day were talking about the latent legal market. She's actually on, so I'm laughing. There's this theory that potentially there's a latent legal market out there that could be unlocked. And I think this might provide some opportunities for them to do some exploration and discovery as to whether their real life problems have real legal issues attached to them. And then, as I said, I think it'll help people as they're researching issues, providing a framework and alerting them to some of the issues and key terms that they're going to need to pay attention to if they're proceeding without a lawyer.
Cool. And how about you, ChatGPT?
I would say that artificial intelligence has the potential to help close the access to justice gap by increasing the efficiency and effectiveness of legal services. However, it's important to consider how the implementation of AI will affect the pricing of legal services and the role of lawyers. One of the ways in which AI can help to close the access to justice gap is by increasing the efficiency of legal research. AI-powered legal research tools, such as LexisNexis and Westlaw, can help lawyers quickly find relevant case law and statutes, which can save them time and increase their efficiency. This can help make legal services more affordable and accessible to a wider range of individuals and organizations. Another way in which AI can help to close the access to justice gap is through the use of AI-powered document review tools. These tools can help identify relevant information in large sets of documents, such as contracts, deposition transcripts, and discovery documents. This can help lawyers more efficiently review and analyze large volumes of information, which can help them build stronger cases. Additionally, AI-powered chatbots and virtual legal assistants can help provide basic legal information and guidance to individuals who may not have access to a lawyer. This can help individuals understand their legal rights and options, and can help them navigate the legal system more effectively. It's important to note that the implementation of AI in legal services could affect the pricing of legal services and the role of lawyers. With the help of AI, the work of lawyers may become more efficient and cost-effective, which may lead to lower prices for legal services. But on the other hand, the use of AI may also lead to a decrease in demand for human lawyers, causing a shift in the role of lawyers and the way they provide their services. In conclusion,
Okay. I think there's a lot of efficiency going on. And Dazza, I'd love to hear your thoughts about that.
Thank you. Well, my basic take on it is the answer is yes. This technology, I think, is particularly well suited for a bunch of different applications in the area of access to justice and closing the justice gap. I think it remains to be seen exactly how that's going to play out. So I don't think we've got a lot of the best answers yet. It's going to take some trial and error, but just speculating a little bit. One thing I think has got good prospects is initiatives like what they're doing at Suffolk University Law School with their triage system. So one of the kind of choke points that requires a lot more resources of people that are, that are reasonably knowledgeable on the topic of law is hearing somebody's explain their problem in their own words and trying to do that dance where you can extract what the legal issues are for them or the set of legal issues, and then, kind of refer them to the right places and kind of size it up. And that's kind of a legal triage. This seems really well suited to reduce the amount of time needed for appropriate triage. And that I think is one bottleneck that it can be helpful for. There's so many others. I guess the main thing I would say though is there's this concept of I was asking about the prompt earlier, and I think the prompt is the thing in the first instance from a user perspective. And if you get good at prompting, you can get much better suited responses. And I think there ought to be an area, which I've been calling now legal prompt engineering. It's kind of like legal engineering meet prompt engineering. And I think by getting better at finding effective patterns of legal prompt engineering, we can sort of insert those at the right points in more effective workflows that can get access to justice, more broadly deployed. There's if you go to law.mit.edu and click on the generative AI workshop we did last Thursday, there's a link there in the reading section to some examples of legal prompt engineering that's not that good, that kind of gives you so-so responses versus the type of context you want to give inside of the prompt to get much better results. So I think we'll all need to think about what it means to be a legal prompt engineer as part of our role. And then lastly, the thing that we probably don't have time to get into, but you should do another event just looking at fine-tuning these models. And so I think we can get the corpus from legal service agencies and from all the kind of notes of telephone calls from help desks and law firms and everywhere else, and find a way to wrangle and label that as a good training set to fine tune a large language model. It will be all the more effective at delivering access to justice. So I think the prospects are very, very good. And the fun part is going to be figuring out exactly how to do it.
Can I add one more thought to that, which is, I think, having worked in the nonprofit space for a while as well in government, I think there is, from the outside, this impulse that like, oh, this technology will just like solve this problem. But the technology is controlled and developed by, people at, upper echelons of society and, corporations. And then if we're talking about applying it to solve access to justice, we end up meaning like to impact the way that poor people experience the legal system. And so there's definitely like a lot of ethical implications to thinking through, yeah, we just apply this to all the services that poor people experience. And realizing that, we need to have solutions and ideas for, implementing this technology should be more of a grassroots effort, and it shouldn't be like something that's imposed on communities that are not involved in the discussion. And so I think that's needs to be like really explicitly considered as we try to apply these to the public sector.
That's awesome. Just to throw in another 2 cents is I think that we needed this. We needed ChatGPT to kind of like provide a tangible, example of what we're looking at in the future to engage us with this kind of discussion about, okay, practically speaking, how do we roll this out? How do we deal with this? How do we deal with that? Before it was just far too theoretical, but anyways, I want to think about like more broadly, like how is this going to affect knowledge work generally to have this kind of technology available. And to kick us off, we'll have ChatGPT give us its thoughts, and we'll probably keep it a little more limited this time, but let's see what it has to say.
The use of generative AI, which refers to AI systems that can generate new content, can have a significant impact on knowledge-based service industries more broadly. Some of the potential effects include: 1. Automation of tasks. Generative AI can automate tasks that currently require human expertise, such as writing reports, drafting contracts, and creating marketing materials. This can lead to increased efficiency and cost savings for businesses, but it may also lead to job displacement for some workers. 2. Increased productivity. Generative AI can help businesses increase productivity by generating new content and ideas, which can help them stay competitive and innovative. 3. Improved personalization. Generative AI can help businesses create more personalized content and experiences for their customers, which can lead to better customer engagement and loyalty. 4. New business opportunities. Generative AI can also create new business opportunities, such as the development of new products and services, and the creation of new revenue streams. However, it's important to note that the impact of generative AI on knowledge-based service industries will depend on how it is implemented and used. The use of AI in knowledge-based service industries must be regulated to ensure the protection of personal data and to maintain the accountability of the AI systems. Additionally,
So it's nice to hear that it knows it has some limits and needs some oversight. But what do you think, Natalie?
Well, I think if we're all in the service industry, and if you're doing what I am and you're lawyering and otherwise serving people, you are, knowledge is content, and everybody's creating content now, and it's all about who can deliver the best content in the best way and the best platform. And I think this is going to revolutionize that. And I mean, I know we're going to talk about how we're using it personally, so I'll kind of save that. But I think the productization of legal services, this is going to be game changing for lawyers who are interested in getting into that space. I think it's going to allow that one-to-one and one-to-many, whether you're delivering content directly to a customer, a client who's in your office, or to 100 people through a course online. I think this is going to help simplify language. I think it's going to help make thoughts more concise, and just overall message to people in a way that maybe some lawyers, not all of you, but maybe some lawyers like me need help with, because we're using a lot of words that are very confusing. So I think we're in the same boat as the rest of the knowledge-based industries. And I think this is going to be really, really transformational.
Dazza?
Well, I think it is going to be transformational as well for knowledge-based industries. It's funny, a few years ago, the best predictions, or the most predictions, were that AI is first going to mostly impact negatively, kind of a very routine jobs, kind of almost like factory work equivalent jobs. And it hasn't turned out that way at all. I think I'm surprised at how good it is for, professional white collar kind of worker type activities. Obviously, as I said earlier, it's not there yet, but stand by, it's nearly there, and it's good enough to help. Dan Katz and Mike Bomarito just presented at a workshop recently their work on having this class of generative AI take a CPA exam, I believe it was, and it did much better on that exam than it did on other exams. And so I think there's going to be areas of knowledge work where it is where it truly excels. The other thing I would say is that, ultimately, I think the question is going to be how it's used in knowledge work. So I think it's going to be a supercharged propulsion for certain creative fields, like especially in the design oriented fields, where part of what makes a successful design sprint or session is quickly popcorning up a ton of ideas. And the limit there is, who do you have in your focus group or in your offsite with a few people, and what did they say? Just to augment idea generation with the right prompts is one of, I think, the sort of surprising areas where this can transform and accelerate, and I think create better results in some knowledge work, especially ironically or surprisingly to me, the creative fields in particular.
Yeah, I remember talking about Moravec's paradox 6 years ago when chatbots were just coming out, and Moravec's paradox is that the higher level strategic and intellectual pursuits are easier actually for AI to simulate than walking or singing, and that's kind of bearing fruit right now. How about you, Jackie? What do you think?
So yeah, what I will focus on, just to add to what others have said, is that I think it's really important to think about how this is going to be productized. So in the legal tech world, that's like how you refer to, you have technology, but it's all, it's amazing, the resources and the money and the millions and billions that have, go into developing the underlying technology, but it doesn't always lead to a product that people can use or want to use. And so there have been other, there's lots of large language models basically that have been around, Google's models, for example, that have been, used every day. But what, OpenAI's achievement has been is they kind of democratized the access to it, and they productized it in this way that is intuitive. We're like, cool, we can type things and we get, answers that kind of make sense to us. But one thing to really keep in mind for lawyers, like bringing it back to the legal profession, is you need to look at that when you first go to use the chatbot. I don't know how many of you have actually played around with it, but there's big flashing, warning signs when you start to use it that are like, do not put anything confidential in here. Like, like it will be read by a bunch of people. Like, this is not good. Like, don't rely on anything. There's a lot of disclaimers. And so, especially for people who are, trying to use this exact, making APIs that connect directly to, this technology, you have to be aware that you still have your professional, obligations. And so you really need to only work with products that you understand. There, you have a terms of service with them that you have read and appreciate, that are SOC 2 certified, or equivalent security. Like Clearbrief has gone through, incredible work to become SOC 2 certified. And most products out there do not. So if you're trying to use, different products that are using, OpenAI's technology that are like marketing products and this and that, they're not guaranteeing like, security of your information. So just know that, and you don't have to put anything super secretive in there when you use them. But if you're trying to say like, here's the facts of my case, write me a brief, like you probably don't want to put like, that into a product that you don't know. So how the technology gets productized and turned into something that lawyers interact with is super important. And that's, so that's like kind of my, my expertise, I would say. And as the founder of an AI company that we do, use different large language models, we don't currently use GPT-3 in our tool, but we are incorporating some really cool aspects. But Clearbrief does actually, it is generative AI. So I thought I would just kind of share what that, what that looks like. If I can just share my screen and show one of my slides.
Yeah, so along the lines of seeing how everybody's implementing this technology, yeah. Let me see. Do you have the ability, or do I need to share it with you?
It says that you just have to enable me to share.
Okay.
Awesome. Okay. So, so Clearbrief is a Microsoft Word add-in that that's the way we've chosen to productize our AI, because Word is where we all as lawyers live and breathe. It's where we do our writing and our thinking. And someone had asked actually in the chat, like how might it change Microsoft products now that they have this partnership with OpenAI? And I think this is one of the really exciting, developments is that when you're writing in Word and you use Clearbrief, let's say you used a GPT-3 enabled Word that Microsoft, built, and they're helping you kind of prompt and come up with creative text. You still have to make sure that every single thing that you are saying in your document is backed up by a citation to the law or to the facts. So that's what Clearbrief does here. So just to kind of show you, let me click here. Okay, so if I'm writing in Word, and I can select any text here, like the governor discussed infidelity and whether she had cheated on her husband, Clearbrief will suggest for me the exact pages. And this is the AI that highlights the exact text about what is most relevant on this page, so that I can now insert a citation and a reference to this exact page from the record. Step one, by the way, was that I uploaded my facts into Clearbrief. But here the AI is actually able to even find something that uses like a synonym, like, did you ask Ms. Camiso whether she had fooled around with anyone? So I wrote about infidelity and cheating, but the AI understood that that's a synonym for fooling around is a synonym. And so it was able to make that suggestion to me, which is something that I might not have found on my own. And so this is just kind of repeating right now, but so then after I'm done kind of using the Clearbrief's AI to add in those, citations and support to the record, other people on my team who are drafting with me can view it in Word. And I can also, share it basically with a click from Word. And all I have to do is, press a button and it creates this fully hyperlinked version that the judge and my client, anyone can read it turns my Word doc into a PDF, but all the sources are visible. So it's been really, really exciting to see how this has been embraced by judges and the court, because for them, it's saving them hours and hours of wasted time trying to track down if people are hiding the ball. And so I didn't show this, but it also, if our AI detects any references to the law, so if I casually mention a statute or a case, Clearbrief will display it automatically. So that can, also bring that transparency to the legal sources as well. It's not meant as like a legal research tool, but more to verify the facts. So that's just like a very practical way of how you can, take large language models and generate, citations and generate suggestions for where you could find the information so that you have transparency and accountability in your writing.
That's really interesting. Like also the ability, I'm sure like what ChatGPT or, any of these models can add to it too, is like you can even generate additional text, additional scenarios that you might want to explore. But I love the fact that you could cross-reference with the actual depo transcript. That's pretty neat.
Yeah, and that's the other piece of that is right now when GPT-3 is sharing sources, like I actually saw like on LinkedIn, crypto.com's counsel posted that like, oh, it was amazing. ChatGPT, posted this answer to a legal question and they cited to a case. And I thought, oh my God, that case would be amazing for something we're working on right now. And he went to look it up and like, it was just a fake case, like what does not exist.
Oh, wow.
But GPT had figured out how to like mimic that look of the case. So it's just like, this is something that there's going to be a lot of misinformation and a lot of gobbledygook that, there might be some truth in it, but our job as the lawyer has to be to now take the good from that generated text and make sure it's accurate and bring the reality to the court.
Right. Okay. So for Natalie, let me just share your slide here.
Okay, so the question is, how are we implementing and thinking about, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so I'll talk first about how we are, and I'm in a different position because I want to talk a bit about the advocacy work. So in the advocacy work, this is really the message that I am telling people, and I think this has always been true. So it doesn't matter if it's a new type of pen or a new phone. You have to weigh whether this is going to impact your ability to provide services and how, and whether it's going to impact your competitors' ability to provide services and how, and all of that has always been true for any technology, even just competition. So people shouldn't be comfortable in their jobs, and I'm never comfortable in my job. We should all be expecting that something's going to come along and make it more difficult or make it easier or compete with us. So when I talk to attorneys and try to get them back into the people law sector en masse. And by that, I mean to be offering more productized services, to be able to offer services at a cheaper price point and enabled by AI and other tools to allow them to do that at a cost that makes sense for them, and then to scale their services. This is the message that I'm going to be using. More broadly, I think this is what the regulators need to, I think a lot about legal regulation, and this is what the regulators need to understand. They need to get on board with things that are happening in a way that they needed to do 10 years ago, but the time is now, because if they wait any longer, we're going to be talking about entire bar associations who are no longer able to police anything, and it's going to be a real shit show. And so I think that's kind of conceptually how I'm bringing this into my thinking. Personally too, I'm a content creator at heart, and so that's what I do. And the way that I've been using generative AI for about 8 months now in content creation. I won't say the platform on here, but happy to talk about it offline. It's GPT-3 model based, and for generally marketing and advertising. And I use it as kind of an internal brain. So I ask it, well, how can I spice this up? How can I make this funnier? Actually, the platform that I use has some pretty funny responses. And so I get some kind of taglines in that way. And then text simplification. A lot of what I talk about is really complicated. And I'm talking to a lot of stakeholders that are kind of inside baseball, so they might understand it. But when I want to talk to more members of the public, I really need to simplify it. So the tool that I use has a tell it to a 5-year-old function where you can put your text in and it'll simplify it for you. And I think that's incredibly helpful as I think about how to do my job, which part of it is educating the public on why legal services need a massive overhaul. So that's kind of how I'm thinking about it and implementing it personally.
Is it working?
Can you see it?
Yep.
Great. So the first thing I'm doing is, well, actually, I should probably start by saying emails. One of my major job projects over the last year and continuing is with an industry consortium, and I continuously have to send these, well thought through emails to different combinations of companies, and I know immediately what I need to say, but then the saying of it is like, some people are better at that than me. I suffer from some kind of writer's block, and it can take me ages to like craft the perfect email. This is not a good use of time. This has been terrific to just immediately get to a first draft, and then I can immediately say, oh, I don't like that, I want to change this, and like I'm good from a first draft. So it's been terrific. Like it's seriously increased my performance on this contract. And that's the very first thing I'd say in terms of personal experience. I'm also getting super deep into just really trying to understand the syntax and the semantics of these prompts, especially in legal contexts. So I'm doing a lot with prompt engineering. You can see some of that at civics.com. The other thing I'm starting to do is talk to organizations that have already got a lot of great knowledge. So like big law firms have got, like tons of memos and tons of templates and just a lot of even Slack. And there's a ton of places with a ton of knowledge that's specialized in a domain and for an enterprise and in a profession. I think we have not even begun to tap how to unleash that knowledge, augment these large general language models and make them much more fit to purpose. So I've been starting to work on that through civics.com. And I'm also trying to surface with Megan Ma, who's at Stanford Codex, who's terrific as a collaborator, the latent knowledge, or what you might call capability overhang. So this stuff is good at make a draft or something where we already know the output. But like you were starting to say, Tom, the brainstorming aspect, I think I haven't even got my head around that yet, but there's connections and patterns where it can generate things well beyond what I might ever have thought of. And so almost the trick there is to not ask a limiting question, but to ask questions that allow for answers that I'm not already thinking of as a result. If you look at civics.com and the blog, you'll see a whole long transcript of me probing it on fiduciary duties. And it started to surface some very interesting possibilities of the contours of actions that would be a breach and defenses of those actions, some of which I had not thought of before. And then I kept prompting it in creative ways to say, like, imagine it goes to court. What would be, the witness examination? What would be the cross-examination? Surface some more interesting things. Let's say that there's a political movement that doesn't like the result of the court case. What might legislation look like that would basically reverse that? It came up with reasonably good first draft of federal legislation in like the right form that hit exactly the little issues that we raised. All these things, I'm not saying like I would replace it with, doing the hard work in government relations of drafting legislation, which is very much its own exercise. It's interpersonal and political. But what it did do is it gave me 50 different angles on the topic that raised latent knowledge and new ideas that really helped me a lot. And I think going forward, what I'm starting to do now with companies like multi.tech that did a demo at the workshop last week, which you can find at law.mit.edu, is look at how to do prompt engineering in chains of prompts. So the output of one prompt is the input to another prompt that says, summarize this or pull out the pros and cons and do a press release and do a letter and do this. And you can start doing these entire life cycles of things with just the right prompts. And of course, those can be further integrated into apps and services in very, very interesting ways to accelerate new things in business and in professions and well beyond. So those are some of the things I'm doing and some of the things I'm starting to play with.
Wow. There's so much ground to cover, and there's so many niches and niches within niches. It's just going to multiply. And so I think that the people that are worried about jobs are just talking about, new jobs, really. All right, let's see if this works.
Just very quickly to answer Nick's question, the company I've mentioned that's a competitor basically to OpenAI is Anthropic, and specifically their ChatGPT offering is called Claude, and it's not public yet, but keep an eye open for it. It's pretty amazing.
Okay, and just checking on the screen share, can you see a screen that says legal briefs on it?
Looks good.
Yeah?
Yes.
Yes? Okay. Let me just do that again. All right, and so let's go over here.
As you can see on the slide in front of you, we are currently working on incorporating GPT-3 into various legal applications such as document review and generation of legal briefs and contracts. This slide illustrates the potential for GPT-3 in the legal field and how it can enhance the efficiency and accuracy of legal work. Also, as you can see, we are exploring the potential for GPT-3 in areas such as legal research and natural language understanding of legal language. This could help lawyers to be more efficient in their research and make it easier for them to understand the legal jargon. It's important to note that GPT-3 is not intended to replace human lawyers, but rather to assist them in their work. We believe that GPT-3 has the potential to greatly enhance the efficiency and accuracy of legal work. We are excited about the potential for GPT-3 in the legal field and look forward to continuing to work with and develop this technology. Thank you.
All right. And before we go to questions, one last thing is I'd like to get everyone's prediction about the future of what this holds for us. So, you know, you could think maybe 2050, 25 years from now. Gosh, what's going to happen when we have ChatGPT right now? What do you think, Natalie?
So I think broadly 3 predictions. One, I think it's a very dark day ahead for legal regulators. I think they're really going to have to be responsive to what's happening and very quickly. And I think the proliferation of these tools and the inability of state bar associations and courts to get ahead of them means that regulators are going to have to really prioritize on actual consumer harm, which is not the current basis for unauthorized practice of law regulations now. So I look forward to that, but I don't think regulators are ready. I think bright days ahead for court systems and access to justice for people without an attorney for the reasons that we've talked about. And then the third, I mean, what a time to be alive. I think it's a choose your own adventure for legal services providers of all kinds. And I'm really excited to see what people are going to come up with.
One thing I'll just throw in real quickly is that as far as legal regulators, there's been 3 panels so far that I've been on that are hosted by regulators, and they're specifically asking about bots practicing law. So they're definitely like, what do we do about this? And thinking really hard. So Dazza, what do you think?
I think this is just the beginning. And you know, ChatGPT, to OpenAI's credit, they made this widely available and for free, so everybody could get an idea of this type of technology. This is, I think, going to be looked back on as soon as a year from now as a relatively primitive version of this class of technologies. GPT-4 is around the corner. I mentioned Claude. There's a bunch of other stuff, even just around here in the Bay Area with startups that you can sort of see their demos at meetups. It's mind-blowing where this is heading. And so what I see in the future is significant improvement in the technology. And I think what we've been talking about is sort of, in a sense, first order change. Like, how could I use this tool in the kind of workflows and, you know, business practices that I do now? I think that is sort of going to be seen if we look back at, you know, like this video as, you know, how do I put a saddle on a car? Or how do I, you know, like whatever, how do I do falconry with a helicopter or something? It's like, it's a whole different kind of technology. And so, like, we couldn't have envisioned when Ben Franklin was getting, you know, and everyone else, electricity, that there'd be the Industrial Revolution and factories and, you know, 24 hours a day of production in 3 shifts. And we couldn't have envisioned with automobiles what it would mean for urban centers and residential living patterns and supply chains. So I think this the second order effects that are going to be profound. I think this is a very important technology, and the thing for us all to do now, and thanks very much to you, Tom, for putting this panel together, is to try to talk about it, get good at it, and get educated now, because we're going to have to be at the top of our games to see how best to use it, and also how best to be safe and responsible with its use. So I guess if there's one word I would end with, which is a little bit cautionary, although I'm primarily very excited and bullish and positive about this, it would be accountability. So in the use of this for the whole life cycle of this technology, from the developers to the companies that are providing it, to the people, embedding it in apps, the people that are utilizing it as part of our lawyering and other service providers, to the users, we are all going to have rights and responsibilities that we haven't yet begun to craft. And so I think we'll need to be somewhat careful as we start to use this, and keep a particular eye on what the new models need to be for responsible, safe, and effective and productive use of the technology. These are the main questions ahead.
Definitely accountability and explainability. Jackie, what do you think the future holds?
Yeah, so I see looking ahead into where this is headed. I do think that legal is not known for its quick adoption of of anything. But I do see this taking hold sooner rather than later. And what I think is so fascinating about, I think it's going to be a big equalizer, because in litigation, as you all know, sounding confident, polished, informed, that's half the battle. And we know that even GPT-3, this version of it, which it's going to get better and better. One of the things that people have noted about is it just sounds extremely confident and authoritative, and it's pretty much grammatically correct. That's, for a lot of people, that would be a really big improvement for, just their ability to be heard and understood in court settings, in, kind of snobby environments that we operate in law, and with very high standards for legal writing. So I definitely see that as a big, sort of equalizing aspect of this technology. It will no longer be enough to just be grammatically correct. But when at least in this version, when you read the output, it does come across kind of generic, repetitive, kind of like your, opposing counsel. And but I think that there's always going to be, now maybe even more valuable, that sort of unique sort of human spark that no bot can talk about our real world experiences and our personal, journeys and our insights. It could imitate our style, but the substance is going to become even more important. So that's, again, where I'm, investing my professional career is in building a tool that helps us be as substantive and as accurate as possible with what we say. But I see this as just being a game changer. One last thing that I want to mention, though, is we have to be careful to not let the hype cycle sort of squelch the real benefits that might not be as crazy as the hype. If you look at what happened with blockchain, for example, blockchain is a real, very sophisticated, fascinating technology. But the hype cycle sort of got out of control there. And now a lot of people have just written it off as garbage, and I still think the technology has definitely use cases that could be really helpful. It's just, will they make investors gajillions of dollars? I don't know, but could they have some real world applicability? I think that the more people we can bring to the conversation, no one would have ever thought that I'd be a technologist, I'm not a coder. I don't code myself. But I, have always loved to solve problems. And I, worked in the public sector for a long time. I worked in the private sector, and I saw problems that I think technology could help with. And so I think that's where we all need to kind of really focus, that we should be involved in this conversation. Doesn't matter if we don't see ourselves as tech forward. We have a view into the problem. And so we can, be a part of this conversation. So I think that's the future of it.
Well, I hope all of that comes true. And I think that we're especially mindful to do this the right way. And I think we are, from a lot of the things that we've said. But given the time and respecting everyone's time, I will go right into thanking everyone. Thank you, Natalie, Dazza, and Jackie, and ChatGPT. We're all very appreciative of your time and honored that you spent it with us today. And a special thank you to Patrick Palace for helping us. I know that we didn't have the time to get to the questions, but I do have them all. And I think that I'll circulate them. And if we can have some questions, we could post them along with the video, because this is being recorded. And for anyone that wasn't able to attend, we'll make that video available. And thank you all who are in attendance. We really appreciate you showing up. And again, a big thank you to our sponsor of this technology panel, Clio. Remember, the Clio Cloud Conference is returning to Nashville this year, October 9th through the 10th, and the American Legal Technology Gala will take place right before, on Sunday, October the 8th at the Gaylord Opryland Resort. It was a lot of fun last year. It's going to be a lot of fun this year, and we hope to see you there. If you know of any person, court, law firm, legal department, or technology that deserves to be recognized, please let us know about them at americanlegaltechnology.com. Again, we'll be opening for nominations in April. But hold on before you go. We will be back in March for another panel discussion about access to justice, and that is going to be moderated and led by Kat Moon. So that is something to look forward to. Thank you all, and we're going to sign off for now, but hopefully see you in March, and hopefully at the American Legal Technology Awards Gala. So thank you, everyone.
Thanks very much.
Bye.
Thank you.
All right, so we have some very generous speakers who are going to spend a little extra time with us to answer some questions. And Patrick, I'll turn to you for the first one.
Yeah, I'm going to consolidate some of these questions because they fit into some categories. One of the types of questions here is both about regulation and making sure that, you know, we're getting accurate information. I'll read these questions. You know, what type of regulations, if any, do you anticipate the profession will look to protect consumers? And I think that fits into these questions as well. Will ChatGPT provide attribution or sourcing with this generated results? And who will ensure that ChatGPT for providing incorrect legal information? So who's going to ensure accuracy? Who's going to protect consumers? And how do we regulate it?
I can say one thing, just from looking at demos of technology that's in the pipeline, but on the way, is I think the connecting back to sources is imminent or is coming soon. You know, one of the decisions that OpenAI made with ChatGPT, which is what most of us, you know, have been able to be familiar with, is that they not only isn't it connected to the internet, but they actually froze the training set, you know, more than a year before. And so it's explicitly not intended or designed or deployed to connect to what the most current or authoritative source would be. And it heavily hallucinates, obviously, when you ask it for bibliographies and things like that. That is not just a solvable, but I think a largely solved problem. I think the real question for people in a legal context is going to be authoritative sources. And starting to judge what the implications of a source are, or what the implications of sources are, because I'm noticing with some of these demos that the sources may be relevant to like a chain of some context, but we have an additional duty to our clients and to put their interests first and having a second order of analysis about, you know, what all the implications are for what it's saying, and basically practicing law and taking this as one input is going to be critical. And I think that the real trick with connection to sources is going to be to resist the urge that I feel too on over-reliance on this thing that just pops out in just a few seconds. We really need to take a breath and take a close look when we start seeing sources and connections to websites and rulings and things like that.
I'll ask you all, I guess, the second part of that, which is about who's going to ensure protection for consumers. And I'm wondering if you all think it's just as simple as a disclaimer.
Well, I think when we're talking about legal services in particular, it's going to be the same regulators now that govern legal services, and the distinction traditionally between legal advice and legal information is going to be really important. So you can't govern legal information on the internet. It's information, people could put it up there. That's their right, and people can consume it, and that's their right. And it could be totally wrong, and that's what happens. So if these are not practicing law and giving legal advice, to your point, Patrick, of having a disclaimer on there, I don't really see how it can be regulated, or frankly, whether it should be.
There was another question asked by Alan Rodriguez about its application today. We certainly talked about what we can see in our predictions down the road, but Alan wants to know, he says it's clearly going to stay and get better. So that we stay in front of it, what creative ways can lawyers use this tool to support the practice in its current form today?
So I would definitely, like I said, be wary of using it on, any confidential, sensitive information. But playing around with it is really fun, and just understanding, like there's different threads on Twitter that talk about how you can word your prompts and refine your prompts to get better results. So I think and there's just all sorts of YouTube videos and other things about that. So play around with it, and I would say, of course, like there's tools like Clearbrief that are already kind of bringing AI into the writing process that you could, start using today, and develop a deep understanding of how AI is already like integrating into the practice, and it's ready for use in legal and trusted. So I'm biased, but I think just trying to like get ahead of AI is just about understanding, trying it and building some time into your schedule. Maybe it's you have 2 hours on Friday where you're like, all right, I'm going to go to a demo of a product. I'm going to try using it on this, brief that I'm working on, or, so nobody can replace that experiential understanding of what it does and how it's used.
There was a question at the top of the hour that's interesting. I didn't know this was true. The questioner says, how do you think Microsoft's announcement of incorporating ChatGPT into Office 365 will change lawyering?
I mean, that's getting us where we live right there. It's like an encampment in our living room, more or less. So I think it's going to change the, it's going to change the nature of the practice. What I don't know yet is how is it going to be incorporated into the Office suite, and I think that there could be very different implications depending on how it's done. Might it be like Copilot, which is a kind of code completion service that's offered by GitHub, which is another Microsoft company, for doing development of code, or could it be kind of draft generation, summarization, kind of brainstorming, templatize? Like there's a lot of different ways it could work. If it's buried in like an all too characteristic complex, mountain of menu items, it may be utilized not very well. So I think, how they roll it out is going to have a lot to do with how we use it.
And Patrick, the tool that I use has an extension. So when I'm using Word or anything, I can just click on that little thing by my cursor and it'll just, kind of complete, or I can ask it a prompt at the bottom of the page. So when I'm sitting there and can't figure out what to say or have writer's block, I'll just kind of play around and see what it comes up with and kind of go from there. So I think it's a great announcement, but on their part.
One of the people in the audience, one of the audience members asked you, Natalie, specifically what tool you were using. And you just referred to it again. Is there a particular tool you're using with this?
Yeah, I use Jasper AI. It's predominantly for marketing copy, but I'm, okay with it. I don't know if maybe I'll switch over to OpenAI's newest. We'll see, but it's what I've been using so far.
There was a statement here, but I think there's a question to it, which was, it took ChatGPT 5 days to get 1 million users. That's juxtaposed against Instagram taking 2.5 months, Facebook 10 months, and Netflix 3.5 years. How fast is this going to spread?
I kick it to Dazza for that one.
fast, very fast.
I was just going to jump in and say, you know, when I was flying back from the Innovations in Technology Conference out in Phoenix, people were talking about it in the airport. You know, like there were some people next to me that I think were coming back from a skiing trip, and they were talking about, hey, so how are you incorporating ChatGPT in your work, right? So, you know, something's caught fire.
Yeah. Actually, I might modify my answer a little bit. Like OpenAI was bold in not just making it, you know, openly available, not in a wait list or you know, like only certain number of seats, but free. So population scale, free. No wonder it got, and it's so cool. So no wonder it had a very steep adoption rate. And by the way, I think although the number they announced was just after a week, I've got to assume it's maybe an order of magnitude larger by now as the news accounts and people talking about it has increased. I think it's a lot more adoption than it was at the time that number was cited. However, in the future, you know, I don't think the business model and the value of being first to make a big splash kind of happens for the first people to make a big splash. I think there's going to be some natural constraints in terms of how companies deploy this. You know, the CPU and compute time and the energy and everything else is not inconsiderable. So, you know, those costs have to be covered somehow, and that's going to be one natural constraint on wide adoption. And then the other thing is, you know, with adoption of new technology, there's always like at least, you know, kind of 3 horizons to use that. But there's like the early adopters, and I think we're all early adopters. And then there's the sort of less early adopters who are kind of a little technology savvy. They may be the first people in their office to, you know, to try new things. And then you start getting into the great middle where most of the population gets it. So I think there's going to be waves of adoption. So it's not just the velocity of the first wave to keep an eye on.
We had a younger lawyer in our audience who, you know, was concerned about where this is going. And I've heard young lawyers say, they didn't tell us this was coming in law school, and I feel like I was lied to. And I've heard those words before, and I think this young lawyer is along those lines. He says, or she says, you are also optimistic about the changes AI will bring to the practice of law. Being at the beginning of my legal career, I am less so. Can you speak to potential concerns and ways we might ameliorate those? In other words, what do we say to young lawyers who are coming into practice who suddenly feel like they're vulnerable?
I mean, I can speak to that. Like one of the cool things about Clearbrief is that, like, you know, we have like, yeah, thousands of law students across the country who have just like signed up. We make it free for law students to use and to play around with. And we get nothing but like wonderful, positive joy from them. They're like, thank you. This like saved my life. Like, you know, our tool does an instant, you know, table of authorities. You can just press a button and it will generate your table of authorities for you. You don't have to do any tagging in Word or anything like that. And so I see a huge excitement for people who are just entering the profession at like, they just simply don't want to do certain tasks. And like, I think they're raised with the mindset of, why would I spend my one valuable, precious life like doing a table of authorities by hand? Like, that is not why I was put on this earth. And please, law firm, do not make me do that. I don't care how much you pay me, like, don't make me do that. So I think that's a really great like infusion to our profession, that perspective, where I think a lot of the people, you know, who empower, you know, in the legal profession have the mentality of like, well, if they'll pay us to do it, let's just do it the hard way. And the, you know, this new generation is like, no, that's not good for the clients. That's not good for us. We can still bill, you know, lots of hours, but let's bill them on, you know, crafting like the perfect argument and brainstorming and strategy and, you know, developing a personal relationship with the client, like the things that, you know, AI can't do. Let's use our time on that. So I think it's a really exciting time for people just entering the profession. And another cool thing is just seeing there are certain, you know, educators that are standing out to me I'm thinking who are just really seizing this moment to freshen the curriculum and try to make students available that you're in law school. That doesn't mean you're going to practice, as a lawyer for the rest of your career. You might become a founder. Like no one ever suggested that to me when I was in law school. You could have your own firm, and you could start a business, and there's all sorts of career paths and that are, I think, now being just suggested to this new group of students that weren't really in the past. So I am really, really happy to see those trends. And yes, there's a lot of fear and concern, but like, I don't know, they're a really impressive group, this generation. New lawyers.
There's a question there that I think is a little bit a curiosity from a lawyer about how do we get smart about this? Like, if this is the first seminar they're coming to and they're just hearing about this tool, how do they get to be like you guys? How do they get to be smart, fast, and adapt? And maybe that's really the question. How do I adapt fast to this?
Mr. Cotter.
Yes, Dazza.
Massively dating myself. Two things I would like to add, and I'd really love to hear from everybody on this, because I want to learn how to learn also, and I think we all have different angles on this. But the first thing that comes to first of these two things that comes to my mind is actually how I met Tom. And there is this terrific group called Legal Hackers. It's global, and if you go to legalhackers.org, you'll see there's probably a chapter in your city. and in San Francisco Legal Hackers, we just did with Diana Stern and Noah Thorpe and others a whole thing on ChatGPT, and we're doing another one in February, looking at another aspect of it. And we all learned so much by getting together in these sort of kind of like third place organizations to share ideas. That's where I learned a lot about technology when I was practicing law in something called Boston Computer Society. So I think finding places where people are interested to learn and interested to share what they've learned is an informal but incredibly effective way. The other thing I'd mention is that at law.mit.edu, one of the things we do for free in the interest of sharing information is this monthly series called Idea Flow. And so you could go to law.mit.edu and then click on media, and there's a way to just sign up on a little form, and then you can come. And I'm very certain the next several episodes are going to be on this generative AI stuff. I mean, because I decide what they're on, and I can't stop thinking about this. It's so important. So that's another way to start to talk to people about it. But I would love to hear from others, like how you all think is a good way to learn.
Yeah, so the way I learned actually back when I was first interested in AI was I just kind of got like one book. I mean, that's kind of what I would say is just take any first step where you're just like, I'm going to order this book on Amazon or whatever. Like, I just get the book, and then it's just on your bedside table, and you just, you'll read it little by little. And it's that kind of thing where, none of us have time to go back to school full time to like learn about this. Like, another thing that is enormously helpful is subscribing to different newsletters that talk about AI, and also following different hashtags. As much as we all make fun of hashtags, like they actually have a purpose, which is that, anytime people post about topics, it's recommended in my feed, hashtag AI. Just add that to your Twitter. You'll get constant, ideas. I learn about, I follow all different, thinkers in AI in all different areas, not just law, to just kind of see what the, discussion is about. And you just can sort of learn by osmosis, I feel like, passively while you scroll endlessly on your phone. So it's my hot tip.
Tom, I think.
Yeah, I'm glad.
Go ahead, Natalie.
Oh, I was just going to say, I'm glad Jackie mentioned not just law. So the way that I often do it is I'll find a book like this that's like 10 pages, The Architects of Intelligence. So 10 pages on future predictions from top people in the field, from all over the field. And I'll learn about robotics and all kinds of different AI in the frontier. And that that kind of keys me into some of the things that I want to do additional research on and consume more content on, but also gives me a lot of ideas. Like, how can we be using what this person over here is talking about in medical science, and what does that have to do with law? And so yeah, double click on what Jackie said right there. Absolutely, other industries.
Tom, I think that covers the grouping of questions out there. And while I didn't ask everyone that was asked, we certainly touched on all of the topics that were raised.
Well, that's great. I'm really happy that you all stayed and we can give an opportunity to answer some of these questions. And I know it was a little hurried before when I said thank you, but really, I know that there wasn't a lot of advance notice to come for this panel. So I really appreciate you guys making time. And
Thanks for thinking of us.
Yeah, thanks for including us and giving us the opportunity. This was wonderful.
Really appreciate it.
all right. So let's call it a wrap, and hopefully I'll see you all soon.
Very good.
Okay.
Tech
Bye.
show.
Tech show. Tech show.